All right, so for this deep dive, we're really stepping outside of our usual lane. We've moved away from the usual data sets and policy briefs into something far more abstract.
Definitely. What we have is this compact, incredibly witty philosophical dialogue. The source material isn't an academic paper. It's more like a linguistic work of art.
Right, it features these two experts just wrestling with the absolute limits of language, with existence itself, and with what they call the mystery and the mystery.
Exactly. And our mission here, for anyone trying to get up to speed on this, is pretty simple. We want to give you the fundamental roadmap.
A shortcut.
A shortcut, yes, to extract the core ideas about how we even define what is, and, how we can begin to speak about things that seem to resist definition entirely. It's a way to understand the deep structural limits of our own knowledge.
And what's so striking is that it immediately forces you to question the most basic, fundamental building block of thought, which is the verb to be. We're not just debating ideas here, we're diving into a concept so elusive, it makes the very word is feel unstable. So the dialogue kicks off with this deceptively simple line. One person says, "Back to the mystery again." And the reply just cuts right through and sets the tone for everything that follows.
It does. The other person says, "Sure. And why back? Have we ever been there?" And that right there is the signal. It tells you immediately that this whole conversation, it's not going to be linear. When they question back and there, they're saying the mystery isn't something you can pin down.
It's not a place you can go to.
Not a place in space, not a moment in time, and definitely not some ontological destination. You can't return to it because there's never a place you could leave to begin with.
It's not an object. And they pivot so quickly from resisting place to resisting existence itself. They make an even more radical claim. The source says that when you deal with the mystery, not only is there no there isn't even an is.
And this is a deep foundational critique of traditional ontology, the study of being. When they say there is no is, they're basically challenging whether existence is even a meaningful word to apply to the mystery.
It feels like they're trying to pull the rug out from under centuries of philosophy.
They are. Most of Western thought is built on establishing what exists. If is doesn't work, the whole building kind of collapses.
Okay, but the part that really made me scratch my head was what they did next. Just when you think they've ruled out affirmation, they hit you with this paradox.
There is no is not either.
Yes. What is that about?
Exactly. And that right there is the key. The whole insight is in that move. It's a conscious, active suspension of both categories, the positive and the negative. Think about it. Our entire way of processing the world, from basic logic to, hard science, depends on that binary. Something either is or it is not.
It's one or the other.
But if they're arguing the mystery lies outside that binary, then neither category can possibly apply. It's a space where our language just, it completely fails to grasp the subject.
So if you're listening to this, the obvious question is, how do we talk about it at all? Does the conversation just end there? Do we just have to be silent?
It raises that exact question, and that's the whole point of the dialogue. It's proving the limits of our normal logical language, but it doesn't stop. It offers what it calls an ingenious invention as a solution.
Which is?
They say we have to see differently. We have to step outside the category of is and is not. And that solution is metaphor. They insist the very word mystery has to be used as a metaphor.
That transition is everything. So let's dive into that. They call using metaphors an ingenious invention because it lets you talk about, and I'm quoting here, something that is not something. Why is that so important?
Well, because the failure of is and is not means you can't use what's called propositional language. You can't make factual statements about it.
You can't say the mystery is blue or the mystery is not a particle.
Precisely. You'd be making an immediate category error. It's like trying to, measure the feeling of nostalgia with a ruler. The tool is just wrong for the task.
So we need a different kind of tool, one that doesn't claim to measure or define, but maybe just points.
That's a perfect way to put it. Metaphor becomes the necessary workaround. It lets us orient our thinking. It lets us build a sort of linguistic placeholder without making a claim to objective empirical truth. It's a strategy for talking about the inexpressible.
But they're very clear they aren't just talking about any old metaphor, which I think brings us to our next section. This is about the absolute metaphor. How is that different from, say, me saying time is a river?
The difference is, well, it's fundamental. A regular metaphor, like your time is a river example, is purely comparative. It explains one concept we sort of know time by, comparing it to another concept we definitely know, a river.
Okay. Both things are, in the end, definable. But the absolute metaphor is doing something totally different. It's a linguistic tool that is aimed at the unconceptualizable.
The unfathomable.
Exactly. The unfathomable, or the source, uses this great philosophical term, the unverfügbar. It basically means that which is fundamentally unavailable to our rational or empirical grasp. You can't get a hold of it.
So its goal isn't to compare two things we know. It's to gesture towards something we can't possibly know or define. A pointer to a permanent horizon, maybe, not a temporary analogy.
Precisely. It's not illustrative, it's what you might call constitutive. It is the structure our thought has to adopt when rational definition just completely fails. It's the method we use to even start thinking about the structural limits of our own mind.
And this is where the discussion moves from, abstract language theory into something more like a genuine test of philosophical conviction. This realization leads them to the most powerful part of the whole dialogue.
Yes.
A single sentence that acts as a litmus test for a person's entire worldview. The philosophical proofstein, the testing stone, and the sentence they debate is, there are no absolute metaphors.
Which, on the surface, just sounds like a statement of fact. Either there are or there aren't. So why is it a test?
Because it's truth or falsity. That's almost beside the point. Its validity depends entirely on what you, the listener, believe reality is allowed to be. The sentence is a mechanism for revealing your own hidden assumptions. Let's walk through the two ways you could see it.
Okay, let's start with interpretation one. Let's say the strictly empirical or positivistic view. If your world is only made of things that demonstrably exist or do not exist, how do you read that sentence?
For that person, the sentence, there are no absolute metaphors, is, well, it's unequivocally true.
It has to be.
It has to be. If your definition of truth is limited to what can be measured empirically or proven rationally, then something that is inherently unconceptualizable simply cannot exist. It's ruled out by definition.
They exclude it right away.
They must. Absolute metaphors become what the dialogue calls the famous third. They don't fit into the box labeled is, and they don't fit into the box labeled is not. So if you only have those two boxes,
then it can't exist. The mystery itself is just ruled out as a serious topic. It's either, an emotion or just a gap in our knowledge that science hasn't filled yet.
Precisely. For the positivist, their system is closed. The criteria for what's real are maintained by just ruling out anything that threatens that neat binary.
Okay, but let's push back on that. What about interpretation two? For someone with a more, let's say, open or metaphysical view, someone who allows that reality might have dimensions beyond what we can currently measure, how do they hear the sentence, there are no absolute metaphors?
For them, the sentence is just meaningless. It's nonsense. And not because they disagree with it, but because the statement itself is structurally fundamentally flawed.
Flawed how? What's the error?
It's a classic category error. The dialogue calls it an inadmissible mixing of existence and emergence of existence. Think of it like this. The positivist is trying to apply the rules for a physical object, does it exist, to a linguistic tool. How does it function? It's like asking, is the color blue heavier than the idea of freedom? The question makes no sense because you're jamming together two completely different logical categories.
So this sentence is trying to drag this non-empirical thing, the absolute metaphor, into the empirical courtroom of is or is not, which we've already established it can't enter.
Correct. For this more open worldview, the absolute metaphor isn't something that exists like a table exists. It's something that emerges as a necessary structure when our language hits a wall. So applying the is test to it is it's a logical absurdity.
And that is the big aha moment. Depending on your core beliefs about what reality is, the sentence is either 100% true or 100% nonsensical. It's the perfect diagnostic tool.
It is. It's a perfect testing stone.
So in the dialogue's conclusion, they bring this all home. They connect this linguistic idea back to the limits of reality itself. They say the absolute metaphor is the identifier for the blind spot of our existence.
It's such a powerful image, and it's very intentional. I mean, think about the actual blind spot in your eye. It's a necessary gap in your vision where the optic nerve connects. It's a structural feature.
You can't see it, but you know it's there because of the structure of the eye.
Exactly. And the absolute metaphor works the same way. It's the concept that gives a name to what can't be named. It doesn't show you the mystery. It illuminates the boundary, the cognitive edge where your rational mind gives out.
But the analysis goes one step further, which is, I think, the most radical part.
Yeah.
The dialogue doesn't just say this is a blind spot in human knowledge or our language.
No. This is the big move. They state that this structural limit, this blind spot, applies not just to our existence, but to any kind of existence. That raises the stakes enormously.
So if you connect that to the big picture, it means the mystery isn't just some temporary gap in human knowledge that science will eventually fill. It's
Yeah.
not like discovering a new planet.
It's so much more profound than that. The suggestion here is that the mystery is an ontological principle. It is a structural feature of reality itself, a point where language and the ISIS not binary just collapse, no matter who or what is doing the observing.
And that structural limit really explains the whole form of the source material, why it's called a linguistic work of art. It doesn't explain the mystery.
It enacts it. It performs it for you.
Right.
The whole dialogue is playful, it's circular, it's self-aware. The goal was never to give you a neat conclusion you could write down. The goal was to trace the contours of the ineffable, to show you the boundaries by playing with language and logic right up until they break.
Which brings us back to you listening to this. What we've learned is that thinking about the mystery is always really thinking about the limits of our own language and our own worldview. We've seen that is and is nots are, well, they're just inadequate tools for the absolute. And that metaphors are sometimes more than just illustrations. They're necessary structures of thought.
And so fittingly, after this entire intellectual maze, the dialogue just ends. It's so abrupt, the final exchange is just, I think we should stop. Good.
A perfect, respectful silence when you hit the limit of what can be said. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. If the absolute metaphor is the identifier for the blind spot of existence, and if the most honest response to the unsayable is sometimes just to stop talking, what conversation are you still trying to force into the rigid boxes of is or is not?
What conversation would be better served by respectful silence? What truth in your life, whether it's emotional, spiritual, aesthetic, can only be evoked or pointed to with a metaphor and never, ever stated with a definition? Think about that structural limit.